Palma de Fuego has seen significant development over the years, beginning with Verde Beach Pyrotechnic and its supporting neighborhoods many decades ago, to Playa de Matero, and more recently, Los Verdes Square and San Riviera. And since the very beginning, the town has charged all developers an impact fee, or a one-time capital charge imposed on developers by municipalities to help fund the capital costs of the additional public services, infrastructure, or transportation facilities necessitated by and attributed directly to new development. Many types of impact fees have been charged to support the development of the island, but only one type has not been fully expended: the town's park impact fee. The purpose of the fee has been to develop this massive park, as well as a bicycle highway all the way around the island. These two amenities will provide a strong base for adventure tourism on the island and continue to enhance the economy of the area. However, impact fees only provide funding for capital costs, which are the costs associated with building a project. Maintenance costs are not applicable even for remaining funds, which is why infrastructure often looks so great at a ribbon cutting and then falls into disrepair after a number of years. To combat this, local officials have been working with their senators to have the new park designated as a national park, which they've heard through the grapevine that Congress is likely to approve. In this episode, we're going to build this new park, thoughtfully adding amenities in places that make sense and respecting the topography as much as we can. We'll also complete the bicycle highway, linking one side of the island to the other. And we'll be sure to build fire protection because Verde Beach. And by the end, we'll have one of the biggest parks I've ever attempted and maybe one of the biggest ever built in the game. And stick around to the end because I have some important announcements about this series. And if you're happy to see this park finally get built, hit the like button. And if you're more excited about the bike highway, hit the like button for that too, and let me know how you feel in the comments. Or drop an emoji that represents your choice for the sake of engagement. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the city of Verde Beach, and we've got a good one today. We have one of the most ambitious park projects I've ever taken on. So let's go over today's plan. To begin, we're going to complete our bike highway. We've got it stubbed in right here, and it kind of just ends over here as well. So we're going to loop this around. This will not be a 100% off-street facility. Some of it will be taking advantage of our existing roadway network and adding bike lanes so that you could reasonably bike all the way around here. After that, we'll begin work on our trail network throughout this entire park. So that's something that's going to require quite a bit of work, a lot of respect in the topography. We're going to try to make sure that we cover all difficulty levels. So if you wanted something that's kind of meandering and easier to do, maybe you walk over here. And if you want to catch the view way up here, you're able to do that. Once we have that done, we'll add in some amenities. So if you want to stay in a cabin, there'll be a place for you maybe right about here. If you want to go camping, over here. And then we've got a new museum asset to add to this park, and we'll need a number of observation decks up here. Then we want to add a whole bunch of landscaping. In fact, I'm a little nervous. I think my finger's going to be hurting after the end of this. And after that, we're going to add lots of fire protection. We'll have to add lots of fire watchtowers because this place is going to be flammable. And I'm super excited to dive right in, so let's start building our bike highway. Now, interestingly, this bike highway is more complete than you might realize. We've got a bit right here that we need to take care of, and obviously we need to go by the harbor. But outside of that, most of this highway has actually been completed. So let's turn on our contour view so that we can make sure that what we're doing makes sense in terms of our terrain. Now, a couple of things I've been thinking about. One unit is 8 meters, which is approximately 25 feet. So that's not a lot of separation. It's some in between this bike highway and the actual highway. So I think we're going to landscape up and down here so that if someone were to go off the road, they would hit a tree and not a person. And obviously, I think it would be better to have some sort of boundary, but the node limit will not comply. So we are going to need to be thoughtful about that. So to begin, let's grab our terrain tools like I mentioned, and I'm going to pull this out. We'll use our level terrain tool and just find a couple of spots that we can pull this out. And then we'll right mouse click at the top with our slope terrain tool and then pull it up from our low point. Now I know that this looks rough. I tried to overshoot this so that when we are building this facility, it remains flat, and then afterwards we'll need to taper this down. So let's switch over to our bike path. Now I'm gonna start kind of somewhere in the middle and use my freeform tool. And again, I will maintain that 1 unit of separation, 8 meters, 25 feet. And I'm gonna go node to node or node to every other node to try to maintain that separation. It can be very tough though. And this is an instance where you just can't let perfect be the enemy of good. This is not 100% right, but you'd be hard pressed to actually see that it's not right. So it's okay. We can have a bit of imperfection. I'm stopping here because I'm a little leery of sending the bike path down this way because of the distances that we have here with the bridge. I think that there'd be people coming off here and potentially make this a pretty unsafe place to be a cyclist. So this is a very steep road. I'm going to see if there's anything that we can do about that. But we're going to begin by actually having a bridge over the top of the highway. And this is how we will get cyclists into this area. So this bridge right here is by far the most expensive part of this project. And if we didn't have these impact fees that we're charging, I don't know that it happens. But the impact fees make a project like this really possible, which is one of the exciting things about them. Now I'm going to send this right here and we're going to call a bit of a mulligan on this road. This road has always kind of stunk. I'm not really pleased with what I've done here or to this little spot right here, kind of carved in. Let's see if we can fix any of it. If we're going to do this to it, we should at least make the slopes reasonable. And that was very, very steep. I would suspect that we're looking at 15% inclines here on what is our major roadway in this area. So let's try to flatten this out a bit. I'm going to extend this back a little ways and slope even harder in this area. And now I'll switch to a 4-lane decorative road with bicycle lanes, and this is where our cyclists will go. And because we're converting from this, we should get a crossing here. So this is kind of just like the perfect place for all of this to come together. I want angle and road guidelines on, and that is about it here. Perfect. Now, the only thing that might have improved this would be if I would have got rid of the zoning on here. Might as well. We're already over here. We're already thinking about it. We might as well take care of it. And I'm very unhappy with the way that this looks. It doesn't look like a crossing. So what we'll try to do, maybe we'll go with the decorative road. We'll upgrade to this one right here with the wide sidewalks. And that will give us a crossing slightly in the wrong spot. And oh, it won't let us upgrade this. So I guess that's a little bit more motivation to continue fiddling with this. So was rebuilding this road the most realistic thing? Probably not, but I think we have a much better result than we had the first time. And truthfully, I don't know that that first road was all that realistic either with the grades. I do want to improve this in one specific way though. Because this is an important part of our bike network, I want to add some sort of actuation here so that a cyclist that wants to get to the other side or is coming from this way and wants to get to this part of the highway could push a button and throw up a stoplight so that vehicles going on here would have to yield to that cyclists. Otherwise, I don't know that anyone would ever get across this. So we'll go into our junction controls, add a signal here, and now we're prioritizing the cyclists on this road. The other thing is we've done some pretty ugly things to this road. I know that this would have been accomplished by blasting, but that doesn't mean it needs to look bad. So we are going to soften the terrain on the sides here and throw up some landscaping. And now let's fix the slopes over here. We've got some pretty ugly stuff going on over here, but it should be fairly simple. For this one, we'll just take it down to a pretty low brush strength, smaller, medium brush size, and then just soften the terrain. Here we are, and I did not mean to lie to you. I desperately wanted to use the smaller than medium strength brush. It just was really taking a long time. So I went with the high and it worked just fine. You've got to be willing to try different things and be flexible. So that's what I did. Now I do want to add those trees through here. The idea basically being that we'll hit in between the light posts so that if someone were to veer off the road, they hit a tree, a light post, anything besides a person on a bike. And as an official glutton for pain, I decided to plant flowers all the way up and down this road. The idea being that these could also protect the cyclist, but these don't impact the node limit. So checkmate, Cities Skylines, I've got you beat. Now, the one thing I was thinking about is we have all of these shadows casting on the road. And I recently watched a real civil engineer video where he was trying to punish commuters. And he did this so that the light would shine in their eyes. And unfortunately, I've done the exact same thing. So we should finish up though, and we've got this coming around here. We could either convert this to be on the bike highway and then just send it straight down here. We now have these great 2-lane median road with trees and bike lanes. And this is what we'll use to really designate what is on this bike highway. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And look what I've done. I've taken away zoning. I'm trying to destroy the entire city. Whew, that was stressful. We almost had a time there for just a moment. Now we can go back to it. And then for this other one, we'll do something very similar. We'll use the exact same road that we were just using and even throw the same tree down there. In fact, maybe we just keep this tree because this has been there for a while and it'll make it look like we've just striped bike lanes down here, which I think is a much better effect for this area. So now that we have this connected, this goes all the way down here to our harbor, which is where we have our ferry and bus stop exchange, but then it kind of just ends here. So what we'll do is get rid of this and continue this bicycle facility over here. Now, the one thing that's unfortunate is I would love to just add something parallel to this. I think that that's what happened. You build the bridge when you built it initially to have enough space to have a separated bike facility. We don't have that privilege, so we'll do something a little bit different. And this very unfortunately took out all of my rocks here. Apparently the collision between the two does not work. So we'll need to add new rocks through here and just make sure that we don't touch our bike facility at all. And then I'm throwing the road guidelines and basically every other snap to on so that I can try to mirror this road. And you can see that that actually looks pretty good. Now this one is a trickier bugger because of our heights here. So to mirror this, I'm going to try to use the freeform tool. And every now and then I have one of these instances where I really mismove it. This is one of them. That and my wonderful, beautiful network multi-tool. What an excellent mod, and how much I wish I had it right now. Now for this one, I'm going to try to level things off after the fact, and we'll see which approach works better. Now, this bike facility was actually considerably more challenging than the original, which I think is really interesting. But there's just a lot of curves through here, so lining that up can be really challenging no matter how much experience you have in the game. So without mods, sometimes you've got to have a little bit of imperfection and be okay with it. Now, I am going to raise this up. This will be on the beach a little ways. And then once again, we have to add our trees. I am going to skip out on the flowers this time though. And just like that, our bike highway has been completed, and I wanted to see what it feels like to actually be a cyclist on here, and it is outstanding. You can't see the cars because of all the flowers. You see these beautiful trees, and on the right-hand side, you see the ocean and the beautiful pinks and blues of the sky. Absolutely outstanding, and a beautiful neighborhood in the horizon. This is an amenity that people would want to see. It's a reason why people would come here, and I absolutely am pleased with the way that this has turned out. But this isn't the only thing that we're doing to make this a bike and friendly place. We're going to start working on our trails, but before we do that, let's have a brief word from today's video sponsor, Factor. Hi there, hungry people. Today I'm partnering with Factor, our awesome longtime sponsor. Factor makes it possible for our community to get fresh, never frozen, ready-made meals delivered right to your door. Since there's no prep, there's no mess, and since there's no mess, you'll have more time to watch the channel. Click on the link below or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGCPPSCP50 for 50% off your first box. I have 3 distinct goals for the Path Network in this park. The very first one is to link Playa de Matero down here to Los Verde, using the stub connection that we made many episodes ago. So this is something I'm very excited about. We're going to add a couple of entryways into the park, one probably right here next to this cable car, and one down here. This will actually be the only pedestrian connection from Los Verde to Playa de Matero, so it's going to be very important. The second goal is going to be to create an all ages and abilities portion of the park. So this will be a relatively flat section that has most of the amenities that the park offers, but it'll be accessible to anyone who wants to access it because of how flat it is. And then the third goal is to access the very top of the mountain. And this is going to be really important because we actually have a historic amenity up here, this lighthouse. But even if accessing the lighthouse doesn't matter to you, look at the views up here. We've got a volcano, you can see the ships coming in, and you can see downtown. This would be an absolutely amazing place for some sort of viewpoint, so this is going to be an absolutely mandatory place to reach. And I need to be very careful up here because if I inadvertently bump into this, I'll delete the lighthouse and we will not be able to add it back in. So I'm going to be very careful. Let's begin by adding the entryways into the park and take on what I think is likely to be the most difficult one, the one right here. So we've got a couple of conflicts right off the bat. We've got a pedestrian road here, and you cannot place park life buildings on pedestrian roads. They do not work. So we are going to convert this. We'll use one of these 2-line roads with median trees. And then I want to add the park right here at the end. So we're going to need to get creative with this, but the first thing that we need to do is make a bit of space for this. This won't be the height of realism, but we're going to use a little bit of eminent domain on these buildings. Now, before we place the building, we need to extend our park. So we'll look at our park area and just pull that right down here. And then I want to create a road right here. What I'm going to try to do is use this road guideline to completely center it. Then the trick will be going out 1.5 units. So you can see this is 1 unit that's at the side of the road here. I'll turn off road length, and then I can go 1.5 units out this way. And then I can just pull it over this way as far as I want because the units have actually shifted. And now when I grab the side entry point, look at that. Perfectly centered. That is what we were looking for. That is wonderful. So we will obviously need to do some work to make this viable, but for the most part, I think that we're in a good spot. We're going to place some parking over here, and then we'll bring our residential right up to that. That is going to be wonderful. Let's shift gears and go over here, and we've already got parking. So all we really need is that side gate. We'll do the exact same trick over here. So again, get this right in the middle and pull it over a couple. Then I want to grade this so we have a flat pad to build on. And then we can once again bring that in. Now for this one, if we wanted this to be absolutely perfect, we'd need to move things around here. And I just don't think that's in the game plan. We'd actually have to completely demolish this. It's just not really worth it. What we can do is just shift things over a little bit, and then we'll need to adjust our terrain to make this look perfect. But this is perfectly fine. We can work with this. And then our final trailhead will be right here. And for this trailhead, I think that we really need to have parking associated with it. So what we'll do is run this up just a little ways. We'll have to forgive the dip in the back. We'll just not look at this with contour view so we can feel good about it. So let's get to building some of these paths. First of all, I don't want to use these self-leveling paths through the park. That might seem to be the easy way out, but truthfully, it's how we end up with these really sheer cliff sides. So I am going to use the gravel paths, and I'll upgrade the existing paths that we have, and then we'll need to adjust them, but we can do that after the fact. This already looks a million times better. When we have our contours on, we can see that it's actually pretty bad. So we'll need to make some adjustments. So what I'm doing is finding some flat spots, places that I can level to, and just taking this one segment at a time. So right here, for instance, I will flatten out here, and then I will use my slope terrain tool, right mouse click at the top height, left at the lower height, and just pull up towards it. And I have a pretty strong brush strength on, and I'm going beyond the path so I can soften it afterwards. Now that is a nice connection. Now I know that we need to adjust the sides here and soften it quite a bit, but we're gonna have a lot of this work to do, so I'm gonna take care of it all at once. So we'll just move on and just start adding some more over here. And for this is gonna be kind of a trail that intersects this main path that goes down. So let's begin by kind of sloping over. This is going to need to switch back up just a little bit. I tried something new for this segment, and I think it kind of worked. So I basically went ahead and used the slope terrain tool at the top and the bottom. And then afterwards, I took a large brush and went down the center with the softened terrain tool. And we're definitely modifying the terrain height here. And you can see we're dipping down and pulling up a bit. You end up with a really nice effect, and I'm really good with it. So I think that I may try to do that with the rest of these. So you can see it just creates a pretty pleasant effect on the path. And that's what this is all about. experimenting. And we'll make our connection over here. We've got that one just right into the side. And then for this one, I'm going to loop it back around. And I'm not fully settled on where all these fire watchtowers are going, so I'm not going to worry about reaching it just yet. We will take a look at our coverage and maybe adjust that location. Now that we have that core connection made, let's focus on our all ages and abilities path over here. And really, I just want to have a couple of nice loops around this place. And I'm basically going to lay a path down in freeform mode without really much regard to the existing terrain, and we will adjust it as we need to. And I guess that's not truly fair because we are going to try to make sure that we're cutting across slopes and whatnot. So I think that we'll try to use the trees as maybe some of our guide here and follow the tree line and the contour line. And obviously we're going to be updating and beefing up these trees at the end, but it'll still be a valuable way of creating interesting looking paths that are maybe a little bit more unique than just following the contour lines. And then from this location, I'm going to provide two different options. One option will allow you to cut back and not have as much elevation change. And the other option will get you over to this facility. Now in this location, we could reserve paths for later because we're obviously going to want to add some amenities through here, but I'm going to take care of some of those right now. And these will just be alternative routes that people could take that are maybe a bit less challenging or offer direct access to additional park amenities. And I think that's about as much as we'll do over here. And I do think that this would be a facility that most people could navigate. You can see that we're basically looking at just a few meters of elevation gain over multiple meters in length. So I feel like this is pretty gentle, and that was what we were generally going for over here. And that leaves us with our last challenge, which is this. This is going to be a really tough one because once we get over here, we're basically switchbacking all the way up. So we'll start right here in the center, and I'll more or less follow contour lines and cut our way up. Here is where we begin. And I am going to be basically creating the path for our path before we lay down our path. And that's a lot of paths. So please, I'm sorry. I'll try to keep this simple. So I'm going to basically go every 20 meters or so, or 20 meters elevation gain in each path up. This will be steep. I think it's pretty unavoidable. And then to actually make our paths, we're just going to freeform all the way through this and hope for the best. I don't think I blinked the entire time that I put this together. So I'm blinking now and it feels really good. All that said, I know that this is probably fairly controversial. What I just did was a whole lot of terraforming on the most prominent feature in the entire city. That said, I feel like it's kind of impossible not to do that if you want to make this look nice and honestly make it reasonable. That said, we've got to fix some of this. Some of this will be a landscaping fix. Some of this will be me coming through here and just softening things a little bit. I think mostly it's going to be a landscaping fix though, because this is so tight that there's not really a way for me to come through here with a large brush size. So my fingers are definitely going to hurt by the end of this, but the effect I think is going to be really outstanding. Just taking the contours off for a second, we can see that this actually looks pretty good. The main point I was just trying to accomplish was to get rid of any of the excess leveling that I had done. And honestly, I'm pretty pleased with this. Because we don't have the self-leveling paths, we're not going to see any crazy tearing. Things are just going to look good. So this is I think the last spot that we haven't leveled out. So I'm going to take care of this now quickly. And that looks a ton better. I also decided to get rid of the fences here. Reasonably, we kind of need fences everywhere and we don't have the nodes for them. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to have them in some places and not others, at least not in my estimation. And with that, I think we're looking pretty good with our paths, and it's time to start placing some of our park amenities. With amenity placement, I really want to focus on not overdoing it. That's something I'm often guilty of in nature reserves, just kind of cramming things in. So I want to come up with specific locations for certain types of amenities, reasons you might want to travel to each portion of the park. So for our all ages and abilities section, we are going to have some tent camping, but we're also going to have a boulder site since we have these rocks here, and you'll come over here if you want to go climbing. Right here, this is basically the center of this main area and very accessible by car. We're going to place a nature reserve museum, which is a new asset that I'm really excited to use. I haven't actually used it before. Over here, I want to place a couple of cabins. So maybe this is a hunting site or something like that. I believe that those are hunting cabins. And then right here, we're going to have more tent camping sites with excellent views from either side, although it'd be very bright, but still, we're going to go for it. And then throughout here, we're going to have a couple of scenic overlooks so that we're really maximizing all these excellent views that we have. So let's begin by placing that new nature reserve museum. And again, centrally located is going to be the key here. And I think that this location right here is about as perfect as you can get with it. Now, I kind of want to give this a little bit of space off from the trail. So I'll go with some sort of a loop like that. But interestingly, I see that we have this decal on the ground, and I think that's actually a decal that we have access to, and it's not upset that I've pulled it back and I don't have a connection there. So I'm going to try to find this decal and just place it. Now, interestingly, I think that this is actually the zoo decal. So I'm not sure why that would be the case. It is very attractive though. I'd say that this is one that I use basically as much as any other one. There we go. That feels a lot better. It's sometimes just as nice not to have these things pulled right up to the road. And while we're over here, let's place a sign as well so we can direct people around here. And just a couple of other amenities as well. Some benches, have a picnic, whatever it may be. Next, since we're over here, let's start building our boulder sites. And these are going to be very simple. You don't need to get super complicated with these. I'm going to try to sneak these as close as I can, and we'll bring over paths to these. And 3's probably good enough, so we'll just run some paths to this general location. And then I want to terraform around these a little bit because you can see it's kind of janky along the edge. We'll probably cover some of this up with trees, but if we can improve things, why wouldn't we take the opportunity to do so? And then the other thing I want to have over here is a little bit of tent camping. And I think if we could basically have that with a view of the water, that would be outstanding. And as I'm thinking about this, this is basically, I mean, if we were thinking in terms of hierarchy, this is basically the arterial. There'll be a lot of people walking past this, and that's really not what you want for your tent camping site. So let's run some little tentacle paths off from here. And then we'll give some campfires across from each of these sites. And then if we really want to get into the weeds, I think it is helpful to put restrooms nearby. You know, I guess I'd want them close by. Now, I decided to go in a slightly different direction here with the restrooms and use one of these Railroads of Japan's public bathrooms. These look to me a lot like what you might expect to see at a facility like this. Really, really like this asset. And then the last thing I want to have over here is just a couple of overlook sites. And again, this is supposed to be a site that is very accessible. So rather than placing a formal overlook in a couple of these locations, I want to do something like this. There we go. This is a completely level site. I'm going to add some trees back in here thoughtfully eventually, but for now, this is the high point of this area by just a couple of meters, and this would be an excellent place to catch a view of the water. So really pleased with the way that that turned out, and we can add something more formal that actually helps us out with our parks rating. And for that, we can just do something like that where maybe it's not the most scenic location, but look at the view you get here. You'd actually be able to take a look at a rocket ship launching over here. And maybe we'll add one more over here to get a look down at all the casinos. Now let's move on to building that little site where we're going to have some of our cabins. And I want to keep that fairly close as well. And for this one, we have to have our contours on. We're going to be densely foresting this area. So it's going to be a fairly good spot for cabins, although we will have some terrain to work around. And this is really close to the main entry point, and that's kind of by design. I'm guessing that these will be where there'll be larger groups, and I'd want them closer to city services, particularly emergency management, just in case. So I am going to create some pads for these and bump these back just a little ways. And we'll try the same approach that we did just a moment ago, adding a little path back there to actually place our cabins on. This time though, I'm going to delete that and send a path directly to the cabin, and that will connect us up, and that just looks so much more natural. And I think we'll send one more out this way and then kind of leave it as is. You know, I mentioned hunting, but just reasonably, who in their right mind is going to go hunting right here? What this really is glamping. Because you come up here in your cabin and you get the perfect view of downtown. And then we gave each of the sites their own private amenities. So we've got a fire pit and, well, I guess I added a second. I added a second picnic bench. You know what? I'm going to leave it. It's fine. There'll be large families visiting here, so it makes sense. And then I want to add a couple of things up here, just a couple of tent camping sites. These are going to have absolutely exceptional views. Maybe we'll even go with one of those smaller cabin sites. And actually, that's the way that we diversify this. We will have a couple of those cabin sites, but nothing else. And for these, again, I'm going to add little segments to where I want to have these. We'll make sure that our contours are on, and we'll place these on high points. Except for this one. This will be on a low point. And these are just these camping site ones with small cabins with various amenities for a more comfortable stay. We don't really need to do a lot of detailing with these. It's just kind of placing them down and fixing the terrain because we're destroying everything right now. But it happens. There we go. 3 nice little cabin sites. And I don't think we need to add bathrooms. Yeah, these have their own outhouses and everything is there. So perfect. The last place we need to come is way up here. And for the most part, I think that we just want an overlook site. We don't want to use anything tall because we don't want to dominate the lighthouse over here. So we'll just go for a couple of small overlooks. And I mean, look at this. What a view. What a view. And I think I'm going to do the whole path thing again so that we get the exact view that we want. Oh boy, and I just realized I didn't need to do any of that path craziness over here because this works just fine without it. So don't be like me. Don't be like me. And then with any of these, we just got to make sure we don't have any trees in our way or large bushes. Perfect. Another great view over there. Another great view right here. And for our downtown, just one tree. We are good to go. That is wonderful. And with that, it's time to make my hands hurt by placing a whole bunch of landscaping. Our strategy for landscaping the park is going to be fairly simple. I want to do what I've done over here. So this was an area that had a whole bunch of those vanilla palm trees. And we took a bunch of the live oaks and some other new trees that Mr. Mason put together and sprinkled them in through the areas that already had trees. And the result of that is a very dense looking forest. We're going to do basically the same thing here. We're going to zoom way out and try to place these in here and try not to encroach upon areas that don't have them. And then I want to remove trees from places that don't exactly make sense, such as really steep slopes like this, if we have any in locations like that. So we'll begin here and we're just going to go ham. We're just going to make it happen. I've been clicking the mouse button for about 25 solid minutes straight and my finger's kind of pulsing, but I'm really pleased with the result, so I think it's totally worth it. So I think the trick to doing a good job of landscaping a forest is really to come up with a rule and to stick to it. My rule was anywhere where there were trees, I was going to plant a variety of them. The main thing I wanted to plant was live oaks, but I wanted to sprinkle in a couple of other varieties as well to give it a couple of different colors and some texture and some different feelings. And then in areas where it seemed like it might be plausible, where the textures aren't completely brown like this, I wanted to sprinkle in some. I don't want completely empty fields. This is a tropical environment, and you'd think that there would be lots of trees unless they were completely clear cut. And that's not what happened here. And I just love the way this looks. I think that this looks absolutely outstanding, and it shows you that with some patience, you can do some really interesting stuff in a vanilla game. So I'm really pleased with the way that this has turned out. What I'm not pleased about is our fire coverage. So let's add some new fire protection. It may seem strange to give fire protection its own section, but I wanted to point something out. We have Burning Palms National Forest right here. This thing is burned down about 100 times throughout all the episodes in the series, and it looks okay relative to what we just built. This is absolutely the biggest fire hazard we have in Verde Beach, so we have to do something about this. It actually is. It's the largest fire hazard. So we are going to need to add some significant fire protection to this area. So obviously we'll begin with some fire watchtowers, and these are real basic. If I can get these close to a path, I think that that will be my first choice. You can see we just add that one bit of fire protection and everything looks really good here. We have that other one. We'll add a path connection to that. Over here, we're just going to tuck that away back here. And truthfully, we'd probably want to look for a high point. So this is kind of a high point. This is a good spot. And then finally, I think that we need something close. Well, two. I'm going to guess two more. One over here and one close to the top. But I don't want to go all the way to the top because I don't want this to obstruct the views. So maybe something like this. Not sure how reasonable that is. If you are a firefighter and you have worked in an area like this, you know, especially let's say that you're one of the people who's worked in the Canadian wildfires this year, please let me know where a fire watchtower would be best located. Does it have to be the absolute highest point, or could it be someplace close to it and you monitor, by maybe walking for these other ones? And then finally, one more right here. And I'm placing that again at the high point, and we will add a path connection to this. I also noticed that we had some pretty poor coverage over here. And I'm not sure that there's a ton that we can do in this area, but we're going to try. We have just a normal firehouse, so maybe we need to replace that with something larger. And the one thing that's unfortunate is, whereas the high capacity police station is really tiny, the high capacity firehouse is massive and doesn't fit here. I do have enough room for a firehouse though, so we're going to use a bit of eminent domain and place that right here, which will make most people happy except for the people who just lost their home. And that makes sense. That's not enough. That didn't do the trick for us. So I hate doing this. I feel like I'm being really reactionary right now, but I don't have much of a choice. I'm going to place one more firehouse right about here, and then I'll place one more over here. It's not that much. We're going to go bigger. We're going bigger, and I feel like we're just going to go as big as we can go. All of the eminent domain, all for fire protection, and hopefully this does the trick for us. And yeah, that was what we needed. There's still some hot spots over here, but I think we could probably handle pretty much anything that's thrown at us. In terms of the actual fire helicopter depot, we've got one right here. However, we now have this higher capacity fire helicopter depot, and I do wonder, perhaps we should upgrade this. So we'll do some things that are not necessarily the most realistic. I'm going to bump this over a unit. We'll get rid of that, and we'll replace it with this newer, higher capacity fire helicopter depot. And the way that we'll explain that away is, normally I would expect that we just kind of expand onto some of these buildings rather than just replace them. So we're going to be fine with this. I think it's a necessity, and I'm really happy to do it. All of that said, it doesn't really do much for us in terms of improving our fire coverage. It just gives us a whole bunch more helicopters to fight fires with. Either way, I think it's a necessity, and it's going to be good for the city in the long run. So we're going to go with it. And with that, I think that we have accomplished a ton today. There's only one more thing that we have to do, and that is take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. I'm not gonna lie, every now and then you have a build that you just really struck by yourself, and this for me is one of those builds. The scale of this is absolutely outstanding. I've really enjoyed this build, and I really think it brings Palma de Fuego to life. If you think about the percentage of the island that's national park at this point, it's like a solid 2/5, maybe even half, depending. It's hard to say, but it's a lot. I'm really into it. This is why I would want to go and check this place out. I want to go on a hike here. I want to go camping. I want to feel what it feels like to be in a place like this. So natural and so unnatural at the same time. All of that said, this build is also not working completely, which you may have noticed throughout the build. There are some strange things going on and no one's visiting this park for whatever reason. So off camera, I tried to fix that. I tried to separate this. I added a second park district over this and I changed this entry point over here to a main entrance. And what we see is that there are people going and visiting these cabins, but basically nowhere else. Every now and then I'll see one person venture up here. I'm not sure why they're up here, but just one. And that is about it. And this is really illustrative of some of the things that are happening in Verde Beach right now. So things are starting to break down, and it's because of the size and some of the limits that I'm hitting in the game. I've hit a number of limits, including citizen instance limit now, and that is basically the maximum number of citizens that you can have displayed on your screen in your city at any given time. It's about 65,000, and I've hit that repeatedly over the last few episodes. The consequence of that is that you can't spawn another citizen to walk or drive or take a bike or take transit somewhere until another one despawns. So that's really problematic, and the way to resolve it would be to actually get rid of bikes and pedestrians, considering they're the slowest forms of transportation. But that's not what I want to do in Verde Beach, so we are going to be ending this series very, very soon. And a few weeks back, I asked in the community tab what you wanted to see in an ending to Verde Beach, and I will be taking all of those ideas and compiling a very special goodbye to Verde Beach. And the timing couldn't be better because we have Cities Skylines 2 to look forward to very soon. All that said, I'm very happy that we were able to put this build together and really put a capstone on this island. Obviously, there's more that we could do, but I think that this really is capturing the vision that I had for this place initially, and I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. And I hope that you are as well. And I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you for your time today. There was a lot of trees planted in this one. I'm really curious to know how many there were. But your time is valuable. You decided to hang out with me, and I really, really appreciate that. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining me today. Take care. Bye-bye.